Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. Inshallah, you're all well. Today, we're discussing the Islamic position on the supernatural, which I'm looking forward to. It's very different for us. But I'm joined by Sister Elmira, who I believe right now you're in Egypt. You were saying, Assalamu alaikum, Sister. Inshallah, you're well. And thank you so much for joining me today.
Walaikum salam. It's my pleasure to be here.
You've got a really interesting story when I looked into it in terms of your faith journey as a Muslim, as well as your very personal experience with jinn and demons throughout your life. And I want to get into all of that. But before we do, let's get a brief introduction and talk about your personal relationship with Islam. So, as a born Muslim that grew up in Kazakhstan, what actually led you away from Islam and to New Age spiritual beliefs?
This is a very good question. Basically, a lot of people in Kazakhstan, in Russia, Uzbekistan, and all those stans, they lived in the Soviet era, you can say, when it was communism and things like that. So the religion wasn't allowed to be practiced. And actually, books were burned and people were imprisoned, that sort of thing. So this is why Islam is existing there, but it's a very small degree in comparison to, for example, Egypt, where I am. And this is why a lot of people who are born there under the name of Muslims, they don't really practice Islam. They know very little. They think they know enough. They think they have a balanced life just to be known as Muslim. But really, many people don't practice prayers. They don't practice what is halal and what is not. Mm-hmm. So this is how I was born into. Basically, I can say from my current standpoint that my family didn't really practice Islam because they don't know a lot of things. So, and this is why, and I was always interested in something like spiritual, paranormal, mystical, because I have experienced things from my childhood and I was drawn there. And what else could give me answers, especially in the UK, when I came to UK? It's New Age spirituality with all this mediumship and paranormal experience, you can say. So it drew me there because Islam, for me, I didn't really know what it is. So I was looking for answers, and this is how I was drawn to New Age, basically.
I've had previous guests on that are from former Soviet Union countries, some of whom describe the culture as quite Islamic, whilst others have said that it's quite the opposite and quite secular. It seems from what you're saying, Kazakhstan leans more towards the latter. And as for the New Age stuff, it seems to me like it's a mixture of sort of self-help practices like breathing exercises and meditation stuff, which is not bad at all. But I personally consider it to be somewhat superficial and not rooted in monotheism like Islam is, especially when some New Age practices incorporate, elements of Buddhism and Hinduism, which we see, which is idol worship and forbidden for Muslims. So what made you then return back to Islam, and did you have to retake your Shahada as if you were a revert?
It actually was a long story and long path because in New Age, I was there for like 20 plus years. And I've tried all kinds of things apart from breathing and meditation, as you said.
Okay.
There are so many other things like trying to explore some astral dimensions and reason about aliens and all kinds of things. And divination, of course, which is forbidden in Islam. But all of this I didn't know. It drew me. Like there are thousands of people right now, they're doing that. And I hope they will find their way. But yeah, basically it was a long path of trying different things and trying to find the true path. And eventually that path led me to shamanic ceremonies in Mexico, where I stayed for about 4 years and trying different ceremonies with shamans, which is also not really a good thing in Islam. However, for some reason, it's actually pushed me towards exploring Islam. So this is how I came back. About taking Shahada, I would say I took it by myself because when we start praying, and I actually started praying when I was in Mexico because I really wanted protection from Allah, because I came to it. That's what I mean. It's a long story, but the shamanism and shamanic ceremonies, they have both the good and the bad, the light and the dark. And when the dark becomes bigger, you want some kind of protection. So I went for Islam because that's my roots. I started exploring more and I started praying there. So this is how basically I came back. And when we do our prayers, we say Shahada at every prayer. So basically I said it to myself.
The prayer. I'm so glad that you rediscovered your faith. And I think your story to me is very relatable for so many Muslims in the West who have lost their Islamic identity due to their upbringing. And I think it's important for Muslims to be proud of our religion and fall in love with Islam through gaining knowledge about it and having a lived experience of our beautiful faith. And I feel like that's what you went through. And I'm from a very liberal, non-practicing cultural Muslim family myself. So I also relate to your journey back to Islam as if you were discovering it for the first time. And rediscovering your faith also led to, as we can see, you embracing the hijab, alhamdulillah. So please, can you share about your journey to wearing hijab and the reaction of your family and friends when they became aware that you became a practicing Muslim?
With hijab, it's interesting because now I can see that it's a journey that takes not just a day or two or even a week. It actually can take months because we're changing identity. We're wearing something that we didn't wear before. It's something else. It's something interesting. It's something powerful. It's significant. But at the same time, it can really shake you. Yeah. Are you sure you want to look like this? Are you sure you want to show yourself to the world like this? And I think probably the shocking thing is that most people who you don't know and who don't know you that well, they will be encouraging you and they will be giving you even compliments. However, the closest to us people, they will be criticizing you and they will say, do you have to go to that extreme? And that was my father's comment. Wow. And a couple of my friends just didn't understand and kind of moved away from our friendships. Okay. Which, of course, I understand. Not everybody can see what I see, feel what I feel. And those relationships or those friendships, they're just tested by our identity change. So, yeah, so it was really interesting. But now, subhanAllah, a few months later, wearing hijab, you know, in the beginning, I was thinking, I will wear it sometimes and I will wear it whenever I feel safe, whenever I feel I'm in community. But subhanAllah, months later, you don't want to take it off because you really feel how powerful it is, how significant it is.
Yes, you do. And actually, for me, I agree. I think once you start wearing it, I think initially it is difficult at the beginning. But once you get into the habit and you just start thinking, you know what, this is me, I don't care what anybody thinks. Once you have that mindset, then, you know, alhamdulillah, Allah gives you this sense of, you know, pride in wearing it and you don't want to take it off, like you said. So I'm so glad, alhamdulillah, that your journey has been, you know, led you back to wearing hijab, and that's a massive thing. I mean, there are many, you know, people from Muslim backgrounds that identify more with their culture or the country they live in, or nationalism or political allegiances. And some of these people neglect the most important thing, and that is their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Islam comes before all man-made ideologies, culture, and race. And I think, especially in today's world, people are too caught up in dunya, you know, through lack of knowledge or awareness, and sometimes even through ignorance, and tend to shun their faith because they are embarrassed by it. I've come across many people that have been that way as well. So well done to you for standing firm, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide all of us. I want to move over to the various supernatural experiences you've had throughout your life, and not just you, but other family members like your brother and your mother too. Can you discuss the paranormal experiences you had in your early life with bad spirits, jinns, and other entities?
I've always had various experiences, and this is what led me to actually realizing that there is some other life which we don't see, we're not aware of, we cannot hear. Well, we can hear actually sometimes, but there is something else living parallel to us. And this is what I realized. So literally from the age of 4, I remember having even nightmares. I think we always had something paranormal in our house. And later on, I could hear something like scratchings on the walls when I'm trying to go to sleep, knowing that there is nobody else there. There is no neighbors or anything like that. My parents were waking up, for example, by somebody tapping their shoulder, but there's nobody there, and it wasn't them. My mom heard a voice calling her name in the house. And that's considering we were moving from place to place. We lived in so many houses and so many apartments because we lived in Kazakstan, we lived in Russia, we lived in different cities. Then I came to UK, and also I moved. I lived in different areas in Wales, in London, and everywhere it was apartments. And then Mexico. Then I became digital nomad. And again, I was renting Airbnbs and hotels. And all these kind of ghost activity or paranormal activity. It was almost following me. But parallel to that, I have to say that my interest and curiosity about all these spiritual and paranormal phenomena, I think it was fueling that, because I was interested in opening these portals, you can say, this astral projection, this lucid dreaming, where you realize that you are dreaming. All this I was exploring like actively. And cards, of course, reading cards and divination tools and things like that. Again, pre-Islam, I didn't know that this all are opening doors to the unseen, and not good unseen. Yeah, some of it, it's interesting. Some of it, it's, alluring you, like almost like angelic beings and angelic presence. This is what you might think, that something is talking to you, something is interacting with you in some ways, something is guiding you. But now, from the current standpoint, I can say, you don't know who's guiding you. You don't know who's talking to you. And even to the point where when I hear now people saying, I communicate with angels, I cringe myself inside, because I've been there and I believe that too. And now I know that it's unlikely you're talking to angels. So I can say that it was always there in different forms or shapes. And then it was more and more as I was progressing, as I was exploring mediumship particularly. Then literally my house was alive, and at night I could see beings in my house to that point. So tall gray beings. That's how extreme it got. So from one side, you get used to this paranormal activity in your house from one side, so it doesn't scare you to the point that you cannot sleep. You can sleep, but it's disturbing you, and you're trying to find that protection in this new age world with a burning sage and different things which don't work. The only thing works is prayers, like we have in the Islamic world.
Yes. Growing up with paranormal activity, fortunately, I've never had experiences like that. So for me, if that was to happen, may Allah protect me, I would just immediately start panicking and freaking out. So why did going through that experience actually lead you into, were you not scared to go down that realm of looking into that?
Because it was happening with me since my childhood, since literally the age of 4. Wow. And this is why, you're getting used to that there is something. And another thing is that as children, especially in Russia and Kazakhstan, I can say that we were so curious. We were actually doing certain things which would be totally haram, actually, in Islamic world. For example, we would put mirror, we would try to gaze into that mirror in the darkness, and that's as kids, we were doing that. We'd bring some sweets, and we try to find those ghosts and feed them sweets. We loved isolated buildings, which were like, for example, left alone, when they building something and then they just leave it alone. And we were going to these isolated places and to try to find those ghosts. So basically, we were searching for it. And I'm not sure why, but this child's curiosity was so strong. We all were doing that. It's like in America, they have Ouija boards, that kind of thing. And we had our own variation of that. And we were exploring that. So this is why you kind of growing up in that. And I can say also that I can add that in Russia, there is big thing about all this magic and esoteric things and paranormal things. It's a big one. They still have a program which is called Psychic Challenge, which goes on for, I think, over 12 years now. And it's on TV, on mainstream TV. Everybody can watch it. And basically, it's all these so-called psychics and anyone who is dealing with magic and witchcraft and all that. They come together and then they do certain challenges that they show on national TV. And everybody loves it. So you grow up with that. And perhaps this is why I wasn't so scared of it. And I wanted to explore more, like many people there.
That's mad. From what you're saying, it seems like it's part of the culture of what it's like growing up in Kazakhstan and in the Soviet Union. Islamically, we believe that every human is assigned a personal jinn at birth, known as a qareen. This qareen pushes a person to commit sins and to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The waswasa we hear in our ears to tempt us to do haram is from the same shayateen. The qareen stays with us at all times and even watches us as we sleep. However, before we freak people out, every human being is also accompanied by multiple angels that record our deeds and protect us by the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So angels, obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and jinn have the freedom of choice like humans do, with some even being Muslim. Additional to the Qareen, who is a permanent jinn, other temporary jinn can also attach themselves to humans, either out of infatuation or malice, or due to black magic, or even envy or revenge if you unknowingly disturb them, up to a point of possessing us. So to protect yourself from your Qareen, pray Salah, recite Quran, and do dhikr, of course, like you said, sister. And to protect yourself from jinn in general, do your daily adhkar, do ruqya, be clean, preferably in a state of wudu, and always do dua before entering places like bathrooms, isolated buildings, like you said, abandoned houses and forests. So it's just some information to let people know how to protect themselves, because it is important and it is out there, and I don't think we talk about it enough. Around, as Muslims, I don't think we talk about it enough. Sister, and you have in your earlier years done the opposite of these things, and like you said, you went looking for these entities. So you've also said you worked as a medium and also took part in many shamanic ceremonies. Did that open the doors to more demonic beings? Like, what happened once you went into that sort of realm of things?
I have noticed with the training in mediumship pretty much straight away that there's some kind of disturbances started happening in my house pretty much straight away. And then the more I was going there, the more I could see, like, for example, I would have nightmares, or there's a presence of somebody in the house, that kind of thing. And then at some point, I remember even I left mediumship and I didn't do anything. I was busy with my studies in psychology. So I was focusing on my work, and it was academy, it was university. So kind of gone off of it even a little bit for a short while. And everything kind of calmed down even in my house. And then after some time, something was calling me back to explore again. And I went back into this psychic development and mediumship and things like that. And then years later, when I went to shamanic ceremonies, also, I still remember it wasn't just me, it was so many people who experienced this paranormal stuff there. There was a guy who went to a shamanic ceremony, and when I asked him next morning, I said, how did it go? He said to me, it was terrible, it was frightening. And I said, do tell me, like, what was happening? And he said, those shamanic ceremonies, they go on all night, particularly some ayahuasca ceremonies. So you are in the jungle with a group of people around the fire, so it's like a camping thing, but at the same time, it's there is a purpose and aim for that camping gathering. And he said that all night he could hear voices of like demonic nature telling him why he shouldn't be alive anymore, and giving him reasons after reasons all night for hours. And also he said that he saw a battle between angels and demons, you can say, between the light and the dark. He actually was witnessing the whole battle. He could see the visions. He had strong visions. And before I was even somewhat skeptic about this battle. I was thinking, well, maybe it's all more or less, it exists, but battle. But after a while, now I know that the battle always exists. So yeah, to answer your question, the more I was doing it, the more doors I was opening, and the more need for protection I could feel, that I need to find something that will protect me better. And I was calling angels and whatever I could think of to protect me. But subhanallah, eventually I came to Islamic prayers, and that was the beginning of the Islamic journey.
Subhanallah, thank gosh. And I've heard people online speaking about taking hallucinogens like ayahuasca, and they normally talk about an enlightenment story. Me personally, I'm against all mind altering substances, and I'm strictly a dua person. But I do think that Ouija boards, crystals, tarot cards, etc., like you said, they can open doors to bad spirits. And this is why these types of things are considered sihr, which is haram, as are all forms of sorcery, witchcraft, and black magic, which are also forbidden in Islam. And hearing about your former lifestyle makes me concerned about how close you are to coming in contact with dark energies that could really have harmed you. I mean, that man saying that, I mean, if someone was quite weak in themselves, that would stay with them, those thoughts about why am I still alive and why am I still here. How did Islam help you transcend your former lifestyle and also protect you from these jinns and entities?
in the end of my stay in Mexico, and that was about 4 years, I started reading more and more about Islam. And I have to say that those shamanic ceremonies, you're right, some people, they talk about enlightenment. And I could say that some of my experiences in that shamanism actually were quite really interesting and powerful. And some of them were about divine light. So it wasn't just the darkness, it was the light as well. And that light was calling me into something interesting. Like, for example, I had one experience where I could see the light, and it was a white light, and it was majestic light. It was like divine. And I was a particle of that light. And I could feel the happiest I could ever feel, like ever. In this reality, we don't even feel that level of happiness and that level of bliss that I was aware of. And when I was there, suspended that particle of light, I said, wow, I feel complete. I feel like I don't need anything or anyone. I feel like so happy. And I said, now what? And then, as if somebody said to me through my thoughts, they say, now you know that you exist. And that's amazing in itself. Like, you don't need to pretend anything. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You exist, and that's amazing. And so these sort of things I had in shamanic ceremonies. So that's what I mean. So it wasn't just the darkness, it was the light as well. And that light was pushing me towards exploring the divine nature, that God exists. Actually, I had one ceremony, which I'm talking on one of my YouTube videos, where I had a very, very interesting and deep experience, after which when I came back to my senses, it was as if somebody planted a phrase in my head: God exists, everything else is an illusion. And to me, it was God, like whatever else, everything can be changed. Everything may be made of energy or whatever, but God exists, and that's what you need to know. That's what you need to have at the core of everything, like you said, Allah, subhanallah, at the core, at the forefront of everything, of every action and thought and deed. And this is what I felt that I was guided to by the unseen. But the interesting thing also, that in the latest my ceremonies, I actually started using prayers, Islamic prayers, whatever I could learn, whatever I knew. I would have prayer before the ceremony, during the ceremony, and after the ceremony. And perhaps that kind of helped to, something was guiding me towards the light. However, at the same time, I felt there was less and less need for those ceremonies. There was more need for exploring Islam. That was really curious. And eventually I started exploring more and more. And then I came to Egypt to explore even more. And I left all those shamanic ceremonies behind. It's like the need, it's just gone. So somehow I was guided, subhanallah.
Subhanallah, alhamdulillah, sister. I'm so glad that you left that life behind and sought refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A very simple protection for Muslims when entering a questionable place is reciting A'udhu Billah Minash Shaitanir Rajeem. Also reciting the following from the Quran: Surah Al-Falaq, Surah Al-Nas, Surah Ikhlas, the last two verses of Surah Al-Baqarah, and Ayat al-Kursi, of course. And also Surah Al-Araf, verses 117 to 122, Surah Al-Yunus, verses 81 to 82, and Surah Al-Taha, verse 69. All of this combined will shield you from jinn, black magic, and evil eye, inshallah. Just to remind again anybody that is a little bit worried, but you should be reading this anyway, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect you, inshallah. Let's move on to the subject of human shayateen that walk amongst us. I believe people like Benjamin Netanyahu and his cabinet members, along with Western politicians and propagandists that are complicit in the murder of children and innocent people, are human demons. Would you describe the various demonic geopolitical regimes like Israel and the US, etc., as well as their oppressive leaders, as human devils that are being driven by satanic influences?
I can say, generally speaking, I 100% believe that it's a satanic influences. 100%. No one normal person who believes in God is capable of doing what they're doing. The whole strategy of what's happening. And I know Allah sees the whole picture, and there are certain reasons that we are not aware of. But all this, the genocide and all this, the attitude of, I don't know, it's hard to even talk about it, because it's horrible what's happening. But yeah, to answer shortly, I do believe 100%. It's a satanic influences for sure. We know that there are genes that sit in, or shayateen, sit in people and attach to people, and they're among people. So in those, and actually in Hollywood as well, right? We've seen that with the fires before and everything. That was quite interesting, actually, story as well, where they gathered and they were mocking God, that he wasn't doing what other people were able to, or something like that. It was like a joke, and literally the next day were fires in Hollywood. It was incredible. And it's like, when you see that, the power of God, you think, people, don't you realize what you're doing? Aren't you afraid of God? You know? Yeah.
I agree. I do find it, I mean, the satanic energy that powers these dunya-obsessed warmongers is scary. The amount of death, destruction, lies, deflection, trickery, prejudice is just stomach-turning, and completely from shaitan. You can see it as a Muslim. You can see this as shaitan in human form. And on a smaller scale, you know, we see societal trends in the West and now also in the East. They promote, you know, hedonism, obsession with physical intimacy, instant gratification, intoxication, racism, nationalism, atheism, polytheism, all misguidance from the devil. You know, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from all of these things and guide those who have been corrupted by such evil. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward all our shaheed in Palestine and across the world, and give them the highest rank in Jannah. And since we're on the topic of Akhirah, I believe you also had a near-death experience where you possibly saw the angel of death. Can you please share about your near-death experience and your thoughts on afterlife in Islam?
At that time, that was the year of 2012. So at that time, I considered myself as a spiritual person who was walking the path of New Age on and off. And I was, at that time, actually, I was focused on my psychology studies. I was 7th year at university doing the same job, like research psychology, doing my dissertation. And really, I had a lot of stress from that. And I didn't recognize in time. So something was happening with my health issues. And I had ulcerative colitis, which became worse and worse, to the point where I couldn't get up, couldn't go to work. It went really bad. Basically, it was a life-saving kind of situation, where I was rushed to hospital and they had to do a surgery, which lasted for 6 hours. So at that state, which was like a hazy state for me at that point, because I wasn't between the worlds anyway. I remember when they started surgery, I really didn't care. I wasn't scared of surgery. I wasn't afraid of what will happen, because I was in pain, and then I was just in that fog state. Anyway, so when the surgery started, suddenly I found myself in a completely different reality. And that reality, I still remember, even so many years later, that I was walking in this white corridor, and I can see doors from left side, doors that lead to, I don't know, to places. And there's someone from my right side telling me about this place where we live. It's the afterlife. He's explaining that these doors, they lead to different things, like classrooms, that we study there and that we work there and things like that. And I remember that he was explaining so much more. And I remember mainly that he was so kind and so warm from this. It wasn't person, it was being of light. But I didn't see him directly. He was here, and I know it was some kind of light being. So, and eventually we went to the end of that corridor, and it was light, this white light, as I experienced in that shamanic ceremony. And it was this blissful state. And I thought, wow, I'm so happy. I was so happy. Considering that before that, for months, I was so ill. I don't remember when I was happy that, at that state the last time. And then this being, it basically, he said, you have to go back and your work is not done, and you're doing good. Like in the movie, you can say the doors opens, there was white light, and I'm back in the post-surgery room, like open my eyes after surgery. And the first thing I thought, thank you. This is the best present you could give me right now, because I was so poorly. And that was magical, whatever that was. And at that time, because I was into spirituality, I thought, it's some kind of spirit guide or whatever. Now, from Islamic point of view, I have to see it through Islamic lens. What was it? Some angelic being? Perhaps. Allah gave me some signs, subhanallah. Something was significant. But, trying to understand exactly, like the titles, who was it, who was guiding me? only Allah knows, really.
Did that sort of start your thoughts about Islam and maybe coming back to Islam, or was that just something that happened to you and you thought it was part of the New Age stuff that you were going through at the time?
I would say it made it more significant to search for the path of truth. Maybe not Islamic per se, because nobody say to me like you have to follow Islam. However, saying that, it's interesting. Allah tried to call me previously also in UK, and I remember actually I was meeting people who tried to tell me about Islam, and at that time I thought maybe we can just stay as spiritual, like not attached to any religion. I felt like I had the freedom of being in that spirituality, and then I was looking for that freedom in so many places. And then coming back to Islam, actually, I can say even when I came back to Islam, and at some point, I remember I was praying in Fajr time, which is the early morning prayer. And at some point, I became really aware that the freedom that I was looking for everywhere, I found it in Islam. Because when you are connected to God, that is your freedom. You can be anywhere, in any situation, in any city, in any apartment. But when you're connected to God, you are free. So that's what I was made aware.
Alhamdulillah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you a long and fruitful life, and may He grant all of us a place in Jannah and protect us from the punishment of the hellfire. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from the punishment of the grave. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make our graves a garden from Jannah and not a pit of Jahannam until we're resurrected on the day of judgment. And may our good deeds outweigh our bad deeds on His scale, so we may all enter paradise. I'm fascinated by your story. Like I said at the beginning, sister, I've never spoken to someone that's had so much experience with the paranormal activity. But alhamdulillah, I'm so glad that you have come back to Islam and that you're on this path. And anybody that is on the path that you were on, I hope that this will help them and this will enlighten them that they're on the wrong path, and maybe look into Islam and start doing their prayers and their du'as and their dhikr so that Allah can protect them. Thank you so much for joining me today, sister. It was a very interesting discussion. Inshallah, people did benefit from it.
Thank you for inviting me. It was my pleasure.
No, thank you for taking the time out. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect you and all of us, and God bless you and your family, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Bye.